The rain fell softly on the day we buried my grandmother, Eleanor Rose, the last link to my mother's family and owner of what my in-laws dismissively called that dusty old junk shop on Main Street. What Rose Antiquities lacked in modern glamour, it made up for in character. 3 floors of carefully curated history that had been my second home since childhood. My name is Emma Taylor, and this is the story of how my grandmother's worthless antique shop turned out to be worth more than anyone could have imagined, in ways that went far beyond mere money. Really, Emma, my mother-in-law Barbara said as we left the funeral, her designer umbrella held carefully away from her expensive suit. You can't possibly be thinking of keeping that old shop. It's taking up prime real estate in the historic district. The smart thing would be to sell to developers. I clutched the shop's keys tighter in my pocket. Grandma Eleanor had given them to me a week before she passed, along with a cryptic message I was still trying to understand. The real treasure isn't always what it appears to be, dear. Sometimes you have to know where to look. The shop stays, I said firmly. My husband Michael shifted uncomfortably beside me, caught as usual between his wife and his mother. But darling, Barbara persisted, you have a career in finance to think about. Managing a failing antique shop is hardly. I said no. My voice came out sharper than intended, drawing looks from other funeral guests. But I couldn't help it. The shop was all I had left of both my grandmother and my mother, who had died in a car accident when I was 12. Eleanor had raised me among those antiques, teaching me the stories behind each piece, training my eye to spot quality and craftsmanship. That evening, after the mourners had gone home and Michael had taken his parents back to their hotel, I went to the shop alone. The bell above the door chimed softly as I entered, its familiar tone bringing tears to my eyes. Everything was exactly as Grandma had left it. The Lewis XV chair she'd been restoring still sat in her workspace, the ledger still neat on her desk, the displays still perfectly arranged. I made my way to her office in the back, remembering all the afternoons I'd spent there doing homework while she worked. The old roll-top desk stood against the wall, its surface covered with papers and catalog references. As I began sorting through them, a leather-bound book caught my eye. It wasn't one of the shop's regular ledgers. This one was older, its pages yellowed with age. Inside, in my grandmother's elegant handwriting, was a catalog unlike anything I'd seen before. Each entry detailed not just items and prices, but complex codes and references I didn't understand. Some entries had stars next to them. Others have letters that seemed to correspond to nothing in the shop's inventory. "Oh, Grandma," I whispered, "what were you up to?" A knock at the shop's front door made me jump. Through the glass, I could see Dr. Marcus Chen from the university's history department, one of Grandma's regular customers and closest friends. "I'm sorry to disturb you, Emma," he said when I let him in. "But Eleanor asked me to come. She left something for you with me to be delivered after." He handed me an envelope, thick with what felt like a key inside. "She said you'd need this once you found her special ledger." My hand trembled as I opened it. Inside was indeed a key, old, brass, intricately carved, and a letter. "My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, then you found my real inventory book, and Marcus has kept his promise to deliver this key. What I'm about to tell you must be kept secret for now. There are people who wouldn't understand what I've spent my life protecting. Rose Antiquities isn't just an antique shop. It's a safe house for some of history's most significant lost treasures. Your grandfather and I started this work in 1962, helping European museums recover artwork that had been stolen during World War II. Over the years, it evolved into something bigger. The coded entries in my ledger, those are the real items, hidden in plain sight among the regular inventory. The stars mark pieces that museums and collectors have been searching for decades. The letters correspond to their true provenance. But you have to be careful. There are people who have suspected what we do, the Carmichael family in particular. They've been trying to buy the shop for years, not for the real estate, but because they think they know what's hidden here. The key opens a hidden room in the basement. Take Marcus with you when you go down. He knows about some of the pieces, and you'll need his expertise to understand the full scope of what's there. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you this while I was alive. It was safer for you not to know. But you're ready now. You've always had the eye for it, even as a child. Remember when you spotted that fake Tiffany lamp at the Anderson estate sale? You were only 10, but you knew something wasn't quite right about the glass work. Be careful who you trust, and whatever you do, don't let anyone pressure you into selling. especially not the Carmichaels. All my love, Grandma Eleanor. P.S. That Louis XV chair I was restoring. Look under the seat cushion. The papers there will explain everything about the Vermeer. I looked up at Marcus, my mind spinning. The Vermeer? As in Johannes Vermeer? The Dutch master? He nodded gravely. Perhaps we should check the basement before we discuss this further. The walls here, they have ears. Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Mom's insisting on coming by the shop tomorrow morning to help you catalog everything for the estate sale. I tried to tell her no, but you know how she gets. I looked at Marcus, then at the key in my hand. How long will it take to see what's in the basement? Several hours at least. Some of these pieces, they'll need careful documentation. Then we better get started. Barbara Winston isn't known for her patience, and tomorrow morning she's going to learn that her daughter-in-law's worthless inheritance is anything but junk. As we headed toward the basement door, I could have sworn I heard Grandma Eleanor's soft chuckle among the antiques. The real adventure was about to begin. The basement key turned with a soft click that seemed to echo through the silent shop. Marcus held the flashlight steady as we descended the narrow stairs, past the regular storage area I'd known all my life, to a section of wall that had always looked perfectly ordinary. Your grandmother was brilliant with hiding things in plain sight, Marcus said, running his hands along the wooden paneling. Most people never realize that this wall doesn't match the building's actual dimensions. The hidden door blended so perfectly that even knowing it was there, I barely saw the seam. It swung open silently, revealing a climate-controlled room that stretched nearly the length of the building. "Oh my God," I whispered as Marcus found the light switch. The room was a museum-quality storage facility. Temperature and humidity monitors blinked steadily on the walls. Carefully labeled crates lined industrial shelving units. Paintings hung on specialized racks. Display cases held smaller items, each one tagged with the same coding system I'd seen in Grandma's ledger. "Start with the chair," Marcus suggested. "The Vermeer connection is significant. I found the Louis XV chair where we carried it down last week for Grandma's restoration." The cushion lifted easily, revealing a hidden compartment containing a thick file and what looked like original provenance documents from the 1940s. During World War II, Marcus explained as I read, many Jewish families in Amsterdam hid their valuable artworks before fleeing. One family had a Vermeer, a previously unknown work. They disassembled the frame, hid the canvas inside this chair, and sent it to America with other furniture. Your grandparents helped track down the family's heirs. But this documentation, it's about more than just one painting. Eleanor and Robert, your grandfather, they built a network. Museums, art historians, legitimate dealers, all working to recover lost art and artifacts. This shop became a safe waypoint. Items could be hidden here, documented, authenticated, and returned to their rightful owners. I moved through the room in a daze, matching codes from the ledger to items on the shelves. Each piece had a story. Ancient artifacts looted from archaeological sites, artwork stolen by the Nazis, cultural treasures taken during colonial periods. The Carmichaels, I said suddenly, remembering Grandma's warning. They know about this. They suspect Gregory Carmichael's father was involved in some questionable acquisitions. He's been trying to find evidence of lost pieces for years. That's why they keep trying to buy the building. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Michael. Mom's determined to come by first thing tomorrow. Says she's already called an estate liquidator. I looked at my watch. 11:30 p.m. How many people do you trust completely to help us document all this tonight? Marcus was already on his phone. I can have a small team here in 30 minutes. All vetted. All who worked with Eleanor before. The next 8 hours were a blur of careful photography, detailed documentation, and incredible discoveries. Dr. Sarah Williams from the Metropolitan Museum's Authentication Department arrived at midnight. Professor James Chen, Marcus's brother, from the Smithsonian joined us at 2 a.m. Each new finding left them more amazed. "This Buddha statue," Sarah whispered, examining a seemingly modest bronze figure. It was looted from a temple in Myanmar in 1945. Museums have been searching for it for decades. "The provenance papers are all here," I said, checking the ledger. Grandma was helping the temple reclaim it. James was carefully examining a collection of Native American artifacts. These were stolen from a reservation museum in 1972. The tribe has been trying to recover them ever since. By 7 a.m., we had preliminary documentation of over 200 significant pieces. Their combined value was staggering, but more importantly, each item represented a piece of history that could finally be returned to its rightful owners. At 8:30 a.m. sharp, the shop's bell chimed. Barbara Winston's voice carried down the stairs. "Emma, we're here to help you start clearing out this mess." I met them in the main shop area, where Barbara was already placing post-it notes on pieces she deemed salvageable for the estate sale. Michael stood awkwardly by the door while his mother took control. "I've called Harrison's auction house," she announced. "They can clear everything out by next week, though honestly most of this should probably just go to Goodwill." "That won't be necessary," I said calmly. "I've already had the inventory evaluated." "Oh, honey," she laughed, "I know you're attached to your grandmother's little collection, but we need to be realistic about Mrs. Winston." Sarah Williams appeared from the basement stairway, her Metropolitan Museum ID badge clearly visible. "I'm Dr. Williams, head of authentication at the Met. We're going to need you to step away from that salvageable piece you just tagged. It's a 15th century Italian devotional piece that was looted from a church in Florence in 1944. Barbara's hand jerked back from the small wooden panel as if it had burned her. What? "Emma," James Chen called from the basement door, "the Smithsonian's director is on FaceTime. He'd like to discuss the Native American artifacts." Michael found his voice first. "Emma, what's going on?" I held up Grandma's ledger. Rose Antiquities wasn't just an antique shop. It was a safe house for recovering stolen art and artifacts. Grandma and Grandpa spent 50 years helping return lost treasures to their rightful owners. But that's impossible," Barbara sputtered. "Eleanor was just a small-town antique dealer." "Actually," Marcus said, emerging with a familiar-looking folder, "she was one of the most respected art recovery experts in the world. She just preferred to work quietly." He opened the folder, revealing newspaper clippings dating back to the 1960s, stories of mysterious recoveries of lost artworks, each one mentioning an anonymous American source. "The shop stays," I said firmly, "and the work continues." Just then, the bell chimed again. Gregory Carmichael strode in, his usual air of entitled confidence firmly in place. "Ah, Emma, I heard about Eleanor's passing. I have some papers for you to sign. A very generous offer for the property." "Mr. Carmichael," I smiled, channeling a bit of Grandma Eleanor's steel. "I believe you know Dr. Chen from the Smithsonian." He was just cataloging some interesting pieces, including several that match the descriptions of items your father acquired under questionable circumstances in 1965. The color drained from his face. Beside me, I felt Michael step closer, finally understanding what side of history he needed to be on. The next few months transformed everything. The shop's public face remained. We still sold legitimate antiques to regular customers. But now Michael helped me manage the more complex operation below, carrying on Eleanor and Robert's legacy of returning lost treasures to their rightful owners. Barbara stopped coming by the shop. The one time she did visit, she happened to be there when we returned a medieval manuscript to a small monastery in France. The abbot's tears of joy as he reclaimed his order's lost treasure seemed to finally help her understand that some things are worth more than their sale value. Last week, I found a letter I hadn't noticed before, tucked into the back of Grandma's ledger. "Emma, by now you've discovered what Rose Antiquities really is, not just a shop, but a mission. Each piece here represents a fragment of someone's heritage, a part of history that deserves to go home." Your mother understood this. She was helping us research lost artworks when she had her accident. I couldn't bear to tell you then, but I knew someday you'd be ready to know, and to continue what we started. The real treasure isn't in the monetary value of these pieces. It's in the joy of a family reclaiming their heritage, a museum completing their collection, a culture restoring its artifacts. That's the true worth of what we do. Take care of our life's work, dear one. And remember, sometimes the most valuable things are hidden in plain sight. All my love, Grandma Eleanor. The shop still stands on Main Street, looking much as it always has. Customers still browse for vintage furniture and interesting curios. But now I understand why Grandma spent so much time in her office, making international calls in the middle of the night, why certain pieces would disappear without ever being sold. why some visitors would leave with tears of joy after private meetings in the back room. Michael helps manage a legitimate antique business now, having left his corporate job to join me full time. He has a good eye for it, though he still sometimes shakes his head in amazement when we unlock that basement door. Barbara tells her country club friends that her daughter-in-law does something with art recovery, making it sound as prestigious as possible without understanding the real scope of our work. That's fine. Like Grandma Eleanor, I've learned that sometimes it's better to let people believe what they want to believe. Yesterday, a young woman came into the shop clutching a faded photograph of a painting that had hung in her grandmother's house in Warsaw before the war. As I took her to my office and opened Grandma's ledger to check a familiar code, I could almost hear Eleanor's voice. The real treasure isn't always what it appears to be, dear. Sometimes you have to know where to look. Rose Antiquities continues its quiet mission, hiding history's lost treasures in plain sight until they can find their way home. And in my grandmother's old office, I'm teaching my own daughter about provenance, authenticity, and the true value of preserving the past. Some might call it just another antique shop, but we know better. After all, the most precious things often look ordinary to those who don't know where to look.